Alright, this video is a long time coming, and I don't know how coherent it'll be, but I want to talk about the Rook and the Rose trilogy today and whether you should be reading it. Like all my Should You Read videos, this will be spoiler-free. This will be me attempting to separate myself from my gushing love of this trilogy to help you decide, is this your next fantasy trilogy. Also, at the top of this video, I want you to know that I have an interview with both of the authors for this trilogy. If you didn't know, it's an author duo, Marie Brennan and Alice Helm, and we, spoiler-free, go into the world building of this series. So if you want to know even more than what I'm going to say in this video, and also to see us geek out about a bunch of stuff, check it out. It's great for people who've read the books. It's great for people who are looking to get into the books and see the intention behind the art. I really loved doing that interview. Like I do in all of my reviews, I want to talk about my experience, my takeaways, how I read it, because we all come to art with our own baggage. And so I have been reading this series since it came out. I have read The Mask of Mirrors 3 times, I've read The Liar's Knot twice, and I've read Labyrinth's Heart this summer for the first time. I have also consumed it physically read and with audiobooks. I love both experiences. The audiobooks are phenomenal. And actually, like, especially if you're doing reread, really wonderful because it just adds more to it. Like, you get new character voices for these characters that you already love, presuming you're rereading it because you like it. And it just brings it to life. It's kind of like seeing an adaptation of your favorite thing. But it's like an audiobook because the narrator is that good at making scenes pop up the page. This is a world with complex culture, as we'll get into in the world building section of this video. And that means there are many dialects and accents, and she just knocks it out of the park, okay? Truly phenomenal. So, I'm a fan. This is a 5-star series for me, even if there are parts of the pacing I didn't love as much, even if there are books that are my quote-unquote favorite. All books are 5 stars. I probably have a soft spot for the first book because that's where it all began, and it was one of those instant, oh, I'm going to love this. This is my thing, and as readers, we all know that's like the best feeling to ever have while reading a book. So now I'm going to pivot into trying to give you a sense of what you're going to find in this trilogy, like plot, trope-wise, like what its purpose is, not quite just a synopsis, which is, it's going to be involved because it's this series you can kind of take on different surface levels, and it has a lot of things it's juggling, but I think it does it fairly successfully. But the general first level that you experience is we have Ren. She is one of our main characters. Ren and her found family is coming back to her home city of Nadezhra. Actually, is it the city of Nadezhra? I don't know. She's coming back to Nadezhra, okay? She's been away for a while for reasons you learn pretty early on, and she has been raised to be a con woman, and she wants to con her way into one of the noble houses because she wants stability and money for her and her family. And that's the thing. She's doing a long con. That's where we start. Then we also learn that in this world, we have this character called the Rook. The Rook is a very Batman, vigilante-type character. We don't know who the Rook is. He is very charming. He is very sexy. He is very anti-normal people. We also are in a city that has a lot of cultural strife. And it makes sense. These are anthropologists writing this series. This is going to sound very familiar, especially if you've been up to date on any current events. This video is relevant whenever you watch it because I guarantee you right now, this situation that's happening in this book is unfortunately happening somewhere in the world where we have an occupied land. So we have an indigenous population, we have the occupiers, but then we also have that messy population of people who have lived there for generations who are of neither group. And that is our Nadezhrans, where they are part Leganti, the noble people, and they are part Versenian, the indigenous. And they don't really belong to either because they're not quote-unquote pure enough. So we have these 3 sort of groups of people. We have the occupiers still having most of the government control, and there's corruption, and it's not, equal for all classes, there's poverty, etc. And that's our backdrop. And it is not a backdrop. It is actually very well fleshed out and a part of the meta plot for the entire trilogy. This doesn't fall into that fantasy trilogy trap of like, okay, here's a society, it's really messed up. Our character is part of the messed up portion, we're gonna fight against it. Oh wait, now we have this magical big bad, so we have to put that on pause and go fight the magical big bad, which is still always fun in a trilogy, right? But no, in this case, in the trilogy, there are magical stuff that we have to deal with, for sure. But it doesn't let go of, this society is broken, it has problems, it's poisoned. That is a part of the issue we are working through in this trilogy. And I really appreciated that. It was a really perfect blend of both aspects for me and my tastes. And you can just also feel how much care and references to our own historical cycles on our world in this work by these 2 anthropologists. So you have a lot of this going on. It's involved. There's politics. There's a lot of weird dream scenes. There's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of dueling. It's got a lot going on. People also always say it's Italian inspired, which is definitely true. There's like a lot of it feels Venetian at times, but it's also very much its own thing. That's the general project. If you want to hear the authors actually talk about the project, I will point you to the interview. I do think something that is probably one of the bigger layers to entry is the world building, because it's got a lot of names and places and things that people need to juggle and keep track of, and it has 3 magic systems, and you have the complex politics of everything. Like, not only do we have these 3 cultures and how they intersect, within each culture there are complex politics, right? Because that's how cultures work. And so you have to juggle all that, keep track of all the names, figure out what Ren's plot is, and the plots are intricate. They are well planned. There are minimal plot holes that I have noticed. Obviously, nothing's perfect, so if you've seen one, I'm sorry. But there's a complexity there. And sometimes not everyone wants to have that much complexity in their reading experience, but this is also, I would say, an entertaining fantasy. Like, yes, it has thematic goals, it has an agenda, but it's not actually just trying to be a thesis or a dissertation. It's actually trying to be a fun time with fun fantasy tropes. We have a competition thing at one point. We have political ballroom dancing scenes. We have big here comes the cavalry moment. We have amazing dream sequences. Like, we have things that are bread and butter of the fantasy genre in this trilogy that are just fun, but a barrier to entry might be if this world building is a little too complex for where you are at the moment you pick it up. And that, you could have read the entire Wheel of Time, Stormlight Archive, Dandelion Dynasty, and maybe your brain just doesn't want to have something that involved right now. And I wouldn't say this is necessarily as up there with, say, like Malazan or Dandelion Dynasty. I would say, though, it is kind of up there with, like, Stormlight Archive or something, where it's like, I wouldn't say you have to make sure this isn't someone's first fantasy book, but, like, part of its fun for a fantasy reader is that this is a new world. Explore it. It's like that open world game where, like, you actually get to go into someone's house and have a conversation with someone. Like, it is well thought out, it is well fleshed out, and with that comes some complexity, some barrier to entry. I would also say this kind of dovetails into the pacing and the length. Each of these books are about 600 to 700 pages, so about an 1,800 page series. I would say they're all fairly consistent. Like, if you like one, you'll probably like most of them, if not all of them. Which one's your favorite is going to depend on your taste, which pacings you like, which tropes, which characters we're focusing on, etc. But for the most part, it's a fairly consistent trilogy. I can pretty confidently say if you don't like the first book, you're really not going to like the rest, etc. But the pacing, I think, is inconsistent for some people, or for some people, they'll be like, why was this scene here? It doesn't need to be there, if that makes sense. And the series is about kind of meandering at times. What I think is really funny is, for me, my subjective experience, the first half of The Mask of Mirrors is unputdownable. I am completely enthralled. I am in it. That, you would think that means it's a plot-driven first half. It's not. I've been told by many people the first half is very slow-paced. I don't know what pacing means, but for me, getting to know Ren, getting to know this world, going to these parties and ballroom dancing and trying to figure out, wait, who is this Rook? By chapter 3, I am so invested that I cannot put the book down. And that's me. That's not the same for everyone else. And I would say that it doesn't become faster-paced as you keep going, but there are explosive moments that really speed things up again. So this inconsistent pacing, the fact that these are so long, depending on who you are as a reader, if you don't end up latching on to these characters, might not make this the ideal paced experience for you, and whether or not you're patient enough to push through that is going to be dependent on how much you care about the plot and the characters and the mysteries that you are seeing. And I do think the mysteries are fairly fun. You do get a good blend of answers to questions and new questions, which is kind of like my favorite thing when I'm reading a fantasy series. Like, I need some questions once in a while, I need some answers, but I never want to have 0 questions. I never want to have all the answers, because I want to be curious. I want to remain curious about exploring this world. So now, getting into the characters, this is the most nebulous part of a reading experience. I cannot tell you if you're going to like any of these characters, but something I will say is that we are generally focusing on people who just want stability and want to feel belonging. And what's interesting is you don't necessarily meet them where they are cognizantly thinking in those ways, but by the end of the trilogy, having seen all their arcs, it's like, yeah, this whole time you were doing things because you didn't feel like you belonged, because you did not have stability. And so because of that, you were taking agency and trying to grab stability, connection, family in any way that you can. Which means that initially when you meet some of these characters, they come across as quite morally gray, but morally gray by whose standards, maybe Leganti standards, etc. like that. And you know, by the end, it's really beautiful how we get to experience all forms of connectivity and family and love. And so it kind of brings us to like, what is the thematic focus, the thematic goal? And you can really see that this is a series that wants to explore romantic love, family love, platonic love, friendship, and you get all of that, and it feels so good. You have all of these forms of connection. Connection is so important to this series. The theme of connection, of belonging, it's part of the magic system even. Like, it's just so intertwined into everything. We literally have these things called knots that connect people in these gangs. So for me, I think that's probably why I love it so much. I am a character interaction driven reader. I love seeing these groups form. I love seeing these groups tested and pushed, and that happens a lot. Some of my favorite chapters are about when a reveal happens for a different character, which changes their perception of a character, and now I get to see, okay, is this relationship going to survive this encounter? Those are some of my favorite things. It's like the sense of drama that I love on TV. So there's a good amount of drama in these books. So if you don't like drama, you might not like it, but it's drama that comes with communication. There are obviously moments, because there are a lot of secret identities and cons, where sometimes you're like, oh, I just wish you knew what I knew about who that is. But also, there is still adult communication happening, and I find it very satisfying and messy, and we all know I love mess. So just know that that's a part of this as well. I haven't really talked about the magic systems when I talked about world building, because I do think the cultural world building is where this is just, I think, heads and shoulder above other fantasy that I would put in this group, probably because the authors are anthropologists. But we also have 3 magic systems, and I think it'll make most people happy, because there are hard magic systems and soft magic systems and stuff in between. So we have numinatria and astrology that's used primarily by the Leganti, and so this is their attempt at using those things to, you know, predict the future based off people's birthdays. Numinatria is like kind of sort of, if this was like a steampunk fantasy, how things are run. It's how we can purify water, it's how we can turn on lights, it's how you can have contraceptives. That's numinatria. And then we have the Visenian's magic, which is pattern. Pattern is about looking at the connection between things. It's a lot muddier. We actually have 2 characters, one who is an expert in numinatria, one who's an expert in pattern, and the expert in numinatria, who is so used to being able to define the universe, is so frustrated that she cannot understand pattern. She's like, why shouldn't this card mean X? And it's like, well, yes, it means X, but it's like also means this, because there's this interpretation, this fluidity. It's softer. It still has rules. It's still, you know, you can discern things from it, but it's, you know, not as clear cut, which it's really interesting to see that as head to head. And then we have imbuing, which works in all of the magic systems, where basically if you have a higher skill of something, or you put more of yourself into something, you can elevate a situation. So one of the characters embroiders. She can add special skills to the clothing she makes. So she makes a wrap for one of her friends to help them with their arm, and because she imbued it, it's actually better at helping that arm than, say, like a normal wrap. And so the magic's not at the forefront. Like, we are going to deal with magic and learning about magic and things like that. Like, that's part of the series. It's really fun. But at the end of the day, it's about the people and their interactions and the politics of this place. And the magic is there because, like, electricity is in our world. Like, you can't not think about electricity. And yeah, sometimes you have to worry about the electric bill and stuff like that. So it's definitely not quite a side note, but it's not the forefront for a majority of the book, except when it is, and then you're like, oh, this is kind of cool. But also, I kind of miss my ballroom dancing scenes. Like, I always have this struggle where there are moments that I really love, and I know we have to pivot to plot-related moments, and I don't dislike the plot-related moments, but it's also like, some of my favorite scenes are when they're learning how to ballroom dance before an upcoming party. I love that. So yeah, again, don't know if this was coherent. I love this trilogy. I do think, real talk, if you read the first book, and if you are not sold after the first book, you're not gonna really love this trilogy more, unless your complaints are like, but I don't know why this happened. If after the first book, you're like, I liked it, but I'm confused and I don't know why XYZ happens, then you keep reading, because there are answers to your questions. There are so many answers to your questions. But if you read the first book and you're like, well, I don't really like any of the characters, and, you know, I'm not sure if I'm sold on the magic, and I don't know what the plot's like, that's not going to improve. If anything, the second book is slower paced than the first book. So I guess if you thought the first book's second half is too fast paced, don't worry, Liar's Not as slower paced. And I guess there are some characters that people start to love more in later books. I have to be vague. I don't want to, like, spoil anything. But in general, if you don't like how the character work is being executed, that doesn't change. Yes, your opinions on characters can change, but the actual execution, like I said, this is a fairly consistent trilogy. It's pretty much, they're all the same length, they are all about the same payoff for me. So there's at least that. You know, if you really dislike the first book, you won't like it. And I generally know, if I have friends of mine reading the first book, that if they don't love it, or at least aren't interested by the end of chapter 3, they might still really like it, especially if they're plot-driven readers, because the second half of that first book is like a bananas plot. But in general, I feel like by the end of chapter 3, the project of that series, its intention is very well understood by the readers who are going to adore it with their entire being. That's just my general impression based off who I'm talking about this series with the people on the internet. So that's this rambly video. Let me know what you have thought of this series, spoiler-free, in the comments below if you've read it. Let me know if you have any other questions in the comments down below. And if you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here, leave a mask emoji, obviously, for the Mask of Mirrors. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.